Why wasn't I invited to Jake's wedding?
The phone rang at home, and after debating whether to pick it up, I finally answered. Suddenly, a man's voice yelled at me. I froze, but the voice was familiar and nostalgic. I couldn't understand why he was so angry, nor could I find my voice.
Hey Nancy, are you listening?
My name is Nancy, a 49-year-old widow. My husband, Mark, passed away 10 years ago, and we had 2 children, Jake and Kate. My eldest son, Jake, is 23 and just got married last month. I never expected him to get married so early in his first year of working. I didn't have any problems with his fiancée, but I did express my concerns about how fast they were moving. She seems like a nice girl, but couldn't you take things slower?
What if I put it off and then die young like Dad did? You'd regret that even more.
His response left me speechless. Mark had been a college professor specializing in animal behavior. He was always deeply involved in his research. When he was offered a position at an international research institute, I tried to resist. Jake's about to hit his teenage years, and Kate is still little. Can't you at least stay until she starts school? But Mark wouldn't budge.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The world's leading expert invited me to join their team. Please.
He even went as far as to get on his knees to beg. And seeing him so determined, my resolve wavered. I had fallen for Mark because of that passion. When he called it the biggest chance of his life, I couldn't say no. We saw him off at the airport as a family of 3. Watching the plane take off, I felt the sting of tears, but I never imagined that would be our final goodbye. 3 weeks later, I received a message from the embassy. Mark had gone missing during field research. Witnesses said they were attacked by wildlife and Mark was the only one taken. 3 days later, only his torn right shoe was found in a forest 7 kilometers away. The authorities deemed survival impossible and he was declared deceased. The memory still tightens my chest. I spiraled into a deep depression, barely managing daily life. I moved back in with my parents and attended therapy.
Nancy, are you still there?
The voice snapped me back to reality. Mark, is that you? How are you alive? I barely managed to get the words out.
What do you mean?
Mark sounded confused. What are you talking about? 10 years ago, you were declared dead during your research trip. I've raised Jake and Kate alone since then.
What? This is insane. I haven't been able to return home, but we've stayed in touch through email. I even sent you a recent photo of me. You sent me photos of the kids grown up. Did you hit your head or something? Are you okay?
The voice was undoubtedly Mark's, but our conversation was surreal. I wondered if this was some elaborate prank. Emails? I don't remember any emails. Silence filled the line.
Nancy, are you serious?
Absolutely. This must be a scam or even a ghost.
Give me your email address and I'll prove it.
I wrote down the email address he recited and confirmed it. I opened my computer and sent an email while staying on the phone. I sent it.
Got it.
A silence followed before he spoke.
Do you only use this email?
Yes, you know I prefer having everything in one place.
This isn't the address I've been using.
My heart sank. Mark had been emailing someone else for 10 years thinking it was me. The photos of me and the kids were sent by someone impersonating me. I've always preferred consolidating everything, even credit cards and bank accounts. Mark knew that well. Realizing this wasn't a prank, Mark asked,
Who was I emailing all these years?
We were both bewildered, unable to process what this meant. Can you forward me the emails and attached photos? Let's talk tomorrow after I check them.
Okay.
Mark hung up. Mark was alive. For 10 years, I believed he was dead. I waited for his forwarded emails, hoping for answers. This was supposed to be a miraculous reunion, but our call ended with mere formalities. Reality doesn't unfold like a TV drama. Kate came home hungry, and I prepared dinner, my mind racing. Hours later, after Kate went to bed, I opened my computer again. Mark had sent 3 emails. My hands trembled as I clicked on the first. It read, Today was Kate's first day of elementary school. She seemed sad, being the only one without her dad there. When will we finally get a family picture? Attached was a photo of Kate smiling shyly in front of her school's entrance. I didn't recall the email, but I recognized the photo. I had taken it. The second email was filled with photos of family events, Jake's high school graduation, Kate in a summer dress with friends, Jake's 18th birthday, a family trip, and more. Why were there so many private photos? The third email had photos from Jake's wedding, photos of Jake with his bride, sibling shots of Kate and Jake, and even one of me with Jake. Who was pretending to be me? Most of these photos were from holiday cards or updates I'd sent to friends. Only close family could have had access to all these. I concluded that someone in my family had impersonated me. The next day, the phone rang again.
Did you see the emails?
Yes, I didn't send any of those.
I know. I'm sending you another email. Read it now.
I opened the email as instructed. Mark had written, "Yesterday I sent an email as usual. Here's the reply I received." It read, "Talking to you on the phone was unbelievable, Mark. I always wondered why you didn't call during these 10 years. Mark's response echoed my thoughts.
The imposter told me not to call, citing various reasons. Kate being asleep, the inconvenience of waking her, your new work schedule, and my field work. It became normal to just email. But not getting a call about Jake's wedding was the last straw.
Mark and I realized the scale of the deceit.
Who do you suspect?
I hesitated before answering honestly. It's Carla. Mark sighed. Carla was my younger sister, 3 years my junior. She had always been kind, helping with the kids and handling paperwork when Mark disappeared. But only Carla or my parents could have had all those photos. I didn't want to believe it, but my parents weren't tech savvy and they'd never impersonate me. That left Carla. We ended the call without answers. Mark was about to head out for a 2-week research trip, so there would be no calls for a while. During those weeks, I revisited the past 10 years, piecing together clues. How did Mark manage to stay abroad if he was declared dead? Did Carla know Mark was alive the whole time? Did she and Mark collude? But why would Mark call now if they were in on it together? None of it made sense. 2 weeks later, Mark called, sounding urgent.
Nancy, where's the money?
His question caught me off guard. What money?
The living expenses I've been sending every month.
I froze.
For 10 years, I sent $4,000 monthly, plus extra for school fees and emergencies.
What? I didn't receive anything. Mark realized the full extent of the betrayal.
I used your old bank account from before we were married. I updated the name to yours after we wed, but left the account untouched.
I rushed to check the old storage box where I kept my old account passbooks. The passbook for that particular account was missing. My vision darkened and I felt like I might collapse. The only person who could have taken it was Carla, who often came over to watch the kids when I wasn't home. $4,000 a month for 10 years, plus extra funds. That added up to a small fortune. This was no mistake. It was a full-blown crime.
I'm sorry, Nancy. I should have realized sooner and come back, no matter what.
It's not your fault. I didn't notice the missing passbook either. But my sister... We didn't blame each other. Instead, we focused on what needed to be done. The fact that Carla had been siphoning funds meant this wasn't just a personal betrayal, but a criminal act. I felt a sharp clarity that replaced my previous fog of confusion. Now, I could only think about how to confront Carla and hold her accountable. I was worried about how my parents would react, but this wasn't the time for that. I remembered that during the early days of Mark's presumed death, Carla had helped me with paperwork. I was so broken at the time that filling out forms felt insurmountable. I vaguely remembered signing papers, but I couldn't recall exactly what they were. My parents had once told me,
"You're still young, Nancy. You might want to remarry, so you should keep things separate from us."
That's why we created a new family registry for me and the kids. This kept me from seeing anything related to Mark's status when I accessed family records. Carla must have realized Mark was alive early on, when she submitted the paperwork on my behalf. Instead of submitting the death certificate, she likely filed a fake divorce decree and created a new registry. That explained why Mark could continue living and working abroad. Carla's meticulous planning left me astonished. On the surface, her life seemed ordinary. She was married with 1 child and living a middle-class life. She wore modest clothes, and her spending seemed normal. Her son attended private school, which could be manageable with 1 child. But what had she been using all that money for? I hired a private investigator to track her movements. When I explained the situation, the investigator looked stunned.
Is this really true?
The first 10-day surveillance turned up nothing suspicious.
Do you want to extend the investigation?
I agreed, despite the expense. I couldn't let this go unresolved. My hunch proved correct. On the day Mark's usual transfer came through, Carla made her move. She used my card and passbook to withdraw cash easily. She then headed straight to a nightclub. The investigators captured clear photos of her entering and leaving, particularly her exit, where she clung to a man, gazing at him as if reluctant to part. 3 days later, she met the man during the day for a shopping spree, buying him luxury gifts before visiting the club again. Seeing the evidence, I felt betrayed. I had spent years thanking Carla for her help, only to find out she had deceived me and squandered Mark's money. Tears of anger welled up as I printed the photos. I shared the evidence with Mark, who was even more devastated than I was.
I left you because of my own ambition, but I tried to make sure you didn't struggle financially. I can't believe none of it reached you. Money is replaceable, but I can't forgive Carla for what she put you through.
We agreed it was time to involve professionals. We compiled the evidence and reported it to the police. The next time Mark's transfer was scheduled, the police made their move.
Ma'am, may I see your ID?
Carla's face turned pale as an older officer showed his badge and guided her to a corner of the bank. What's going on? The people in line watched, curious about the scene.
We're investigating a series of fraud cases. Your description matches the suspects. This is just a precaution. If your ID checks out, you'll be free to go.
Carla forced a smile and handed over her license. Here, now can I go?
One more thing. Can we see the passbook for your account you just withdrew from?
Why? Isn't the ID enough? I've cooperated, haven't I?
The suspect withdraws significant amounts from accounts, not under their name. If the passbook matches, this will be quick.
Carla's expression changed, her eyes darting around.
Miss Carla Smith, isn't that your sister's account? Everything's out in the open now.
Carla's eyes widened, and she began to tremble. She tried to bolt, but a younger officer restrained her.
We found the passbook and bank card for Nancy Wilson's account.
Carla's shoulders slumped as she realized she'd been caught.
Nancy, is this your sister?
Mark and I stepped forward from where we'd been observing. Yes, that's my sister, Carla Smith. Nancy, Mark, why are you here together? Carla's confusion was evident as she stared at us, a mix of shock and disbelief on her face. You kept this act going for 10 years, didn't you? My voice shook with emotion. I almost admired how thoroughly she had deceived us. But it's over now. The lies end here.
Carla, it was your sending Jake's wedding photos that made me call Nancy. That's when we realized everything.
Carla stared blankly before a smirk crept across her face. So, I dug my own grave, huh? She started laughing, a sound that unnerved everyone present. 10 years without anyone noticing. I guess I got too confident. Mark's eyes narrowed as he asked.
Why, Carla? This is a crime. Why do this?
Oh, officer, it's just a misunderstanding. I was just running an errand for my sister. No, Carla, stop lying. I won't protect you anymore. Carla glared at me, a look full of contempt. You always had everything, Nancy. The piano lessons, the private school, the career you wanted, a professor husband. Everything. It was never fair. Her voice rose as she vented years of resentment. So you weren't after the money? You did this just to hurt me? Yes, I wanted to see you struggle, to watch you suffer for once. But Carla, your grievances don't even make sense. You quit piano lessons, failed to pass high school exams, and dropped out. How is that my fault? Her reasons were shockingly immature, and I felt a wave of pity. I was grateful for your help, even when Mark was presumed dead. That's right. You thought I was your savior while I was laughing behind your back. You really are a fool, Nancy. The officer stepped in, clapping handcuffs on Carla's wrists.
That's enough. Let's continue this at the station.
The officers escorted Carla out, leaving us standing in stunned silence. The chapter of Carla's decade-long deception had finally closed. Carla was convicted of fraud and forgery, receiving a prison sentence. She has spent over $700,000 of Mark's money with little to show for it. My parents disowned her, and they never visited her in prison. Her husband filed for immediate divorce and moved away with their child. My parents tried to ask for help with raising their grandson, but were met with rejection. Mark and I decided that we wouldn't be lenient. She needed to repay what she'd stolen, even if it took a lifetime. The fake divorce was annulled, and Mark and I were legally married again. His parents offered heartfelt apologies for their part in the ordeal. Finally, we gathered as a family to celebrate Jake's wedding and Mark's return. For my younger daughter, who barely remembered her father, adjusting to him would take time. But we were patient, ready to rebuild. Mark chose to retire from international research. His achievements earned him a prestigious university position as a full professor. How did you survive, Mark? He smiled wryly.
It was a miracle. I was dragged deep into the forest by that bear and knocked out cold. When I woke up, it was gone, along with my backpack.
He described stumbling through the woods, injured and disoriented, until he found help. Mark took my hand gently.
I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again.
I squeezed his hand in return. Thank you for coming back. Together, we would reclaim the decade we lost.